Afternoon, everyone. It's 1:30 Oman time, and so time for our Q3 Investors and Analysts meeting. Thank you all very much for joining us. Many familiar names. So those of you who are familiar with the way we run these, it's really your event. So the questions come from you, and I'm here with my colleague Vishal, and both of us will be here to answer your questions. Without further ado, we'll pass it over to whoever would like to ask the first question. We take about an hour of this, and we look forward to the discussions ahead. Thank you.
So, Bishan, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Good afternoon, Vishal. This is Abbas. Can you hear me?
Yes, Abbas, we can hear you.
Thank you very much for the call. Congratulations on a good set of results. I had a couple of questions. Obviously, all of us peruse the chairman's report with a very fine-toothed comb, and not just for things that are actually in the report, but things that are not. So my first question is, something that I did not find any reference to in this particular chairman's report is any update on the Manazil project. I think in the last second quarter company report, there was one statement that said that, you guys are in the process of bidding for a 20-year project, which could be transformational for the company's visibility. I do remember that sentence quite well. This time, we found absolutely no, reference to this project. So can we ask for an update in terms of what's happening with the Manazil project? And, just the follow-up is, PDO is known to be one of the more professional sort of organizations in the country. And it's very unlike them to have this sort of delay. At least, that's been, anecdotal evidence from what I have seen over the years. So, if you guys can just speak about if at all there's a delay, what is causing the delay? Are we talking about a cancellation? Are we talking about relooking at it with a different sort of, scope? So that's my question. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And first of all, the reason why we've not put any particular update in this chairman's report is because there is no change from the status the previous time. Where we've been updating is when we moved from being in the technical evaluation stage into the commercial evaluation stage, and then into the final point where we were telling you that we were waiting for that outcome. And the factual reality at the moment is we're still waiting for that outcome. So there is no change in that. The last update we had from the PDO Manazil team formally to the tenderers was to say that we could expect something round about now, about a fortnight or so into November. Deadlines have come and gone previously. So it is a concern when it does take longer than usual to get the response. I think what PDO have said to us very consistently is it is a massive project for them because of that duration going through to 2044, to the end of the current concession period. So the other issue is that there are a range of options on their plate to consider in that, in terms of greenfield, brownfield options, without getting into the nitty-gritty of the tender. So it is taking that a bit of time, and we just have to exercise a little patience on that. If I comment, when you talk about, is there any possibility of the project being cancelled? I think we have to look at what are the options for us. And as you rightly say, we see this as transformational. In simple terms, at the moment, in the PAC, the permanent accommodation for contractors footprint, there are 15,000 beds in the PDO oil field concession areas at the moment. After Manazil, whatever happens, there are going to be 30-odd thousand beds in that marketplace. So it's doubling up for us. For us and others competing for it. Now, under the terms of the tender, if we are successful in that tender, we stand to gain one of two packages, north or south. And they are, north represents 45% of it and south 55%. So they're fairly evenly distributed. And we believe that we would be a serious contender. We know it's down to just a couple of bidders left in the frame, 2 or 3, and we're still one of them. So in the event of us winning, obviously, one of our key, if you like, strategies is about having projects that we can build, that we can get a reasonably rapid return on the equity that we and any co-investors put into that we can get a long-term operational phase to work on following that project. So it's not just any project that we look at, it needs to have those salient features. And Manazil has those features for us. The approximately sort of 50-50 of whichever package, this would require an investment for the Greenfield project of about 200 million reals. Obviously, we would have an element of debt coming onto our balance sheet for that. We would do 30% equity, 70% debt. And that would start on a gradual basis over the next 2.5, 3 years before the P&L element kicks in and we start operating. So in that event, in the event of us being a successful bidder, that would be transformational for us. I want to just explore your question of what if it were cancelled? And the cancelling the whole project is not an option because PDO A wants to replace the older estate of its own camps. And whilst numerically that's a smaller portion of it, it's a very important piece of Manazil, and that has to be done anyway. It has to be done because of the sustainability of the facilities. They were built a very, very long time ago. The second piece is PDO has seen the same as CZAD has with Renaissance Village Dukem and those our customers there, that when you look after the workforce properly in permanent facilities with the right minimum worker welfare standards, recreation and healthcare and good nutritious food and so on, it's transformational to performance, to productivity, to retention of staff, to HSE performance, to attracting Omanis to work in remote locations and so on. So it's a win-win-win. And they've proved that, and it uses less, and permanent facilities use less utilities, so it's a greener option. And by building new, you can put more green in. So the argument of getting at least the delta, whether the PACs will provide 50% of the accommodation, and of course we are the predominant leader in the PACs. We operate over 50% of the beds. We've always won 100% of the amount that we're allowed to win when there can be one of two winners in every PDO PAC-related contract that we have bid since 1990. So I think the need to build is there. If they were to cancel the issue of Manazil as being built by developers like ourselves, we're developer operator in terms of services we provide, then they would build it themselves. In which case, we would not have to put up the equity and the debt and raise the debt. We would then be a serious contender to be one of the operators in 2 to 3 years' time. So in any event, Manazil is going to be transformational if we're successful. And we do have that track record of always having been successful to the maximum allowable award since PDO have been rolling out these types of contracts. So that's the story on it. And we wait. As things stand at the moment, the bid is still live and we are waiting for the outcome. I hope that gives you a clear enough answer to your question. Thank you.
Absolutely appreciate the answer, Steve. I think that gives us good reason for optimism, and let's just wait and watch and hope that it kind of falls in your favor. The second question I had is, again, it's something.
Sorry, I'll just add one thing to it. Is in the event that it was the latter, that they decided to build the Delta of the 15,000 beds, and then we have to wait to compete for the operation. What it does do for us is at the moment we are keeping our, if you like, project finance plans geared for Manazil. It's not that we wouldn't do other projects, but we're not looking at other major projects. We do have, and we're working on this thing we've been invited to in Abu Dhabi, again, oil field, this time offshore building on islands. We're looking at a project in Saudi. And we've again been invited to because of our capability here, proven capability in what we've done here. We would, in the event of them not requiring the build, we would turn that attention full scale to those other opportunities. Because for us, PDO, of course, we're delighted to build for PDO if required, but we're talking to a client partner who has clearly been happy to award us constantly over the years, and we've had to be competitive, and we always have been on these things, and they really like our technical solutions as well. And that much we've had in the dialogue with them as to how pleased they were with that we understand what they need. Now, to be able to move project finance to something that we may not be successful without being the project investor, whereas if PDO, we would expect to be a serious contender whichever way it goes. Thank you.
Thank you for that extra color. I mean, yeah, sure. Give me more good reason for optimism, I guess. Thank you very much for that. Let me come to some of the good news that you guys spoke about in the third quarter report. You spoke about winning the Oman phase of the catering project for the T20 World Cup. So that was good news. You spoke about winning the tender for 3 years, the 9 million odd riyal for the smart meters. Could you speak about what sort of margin impact, one, are you seeing from, because it's a 3-year project, what sort of margin are you hoping to make from the smart meter project? And do you see a rollout happening soon to the rest of the country as well? And of course, what would be the T20 World Cup would be a one-time event, but what sort of bottom line impact are you seeing in the fourth quarter?
So I'll start with T20 and then back into the smart meter rollout. So T20 has come and gone. It was a terrific event for Oman, and congratulations to Oman Cricket and the Oman Cricket team for their participation in it. And I think it was a great event for Oman. Now, in reality, whilst I do not underestimate the scale of effort and task of what we had to execute at short notice, in reality, it took place over 3 days with a little bit of activity in the intervening day between matches. And so whilst it's a huge feather in our cap that we now add to our earlier event, catering events like the Asian Beach Games and EFG Sailing Arabia and so on, we now add ICC T20 World Cup. Yes, it was a smaller phase at the start of it, but it's still that feather in our cap. The reality is it is not a massive value contract for the reasons I've described. When you look at the total numbers of people, of the teams, the officials, the spectators, etc., coming into the ground, the VIP section. So we had lots to do. But if you think of the numbers over 3 days, it's not going to be a life-changing number. That's what I need to bring to your attention. And at the same time, I'm delighted to say, and I'm not at liberty to say, because of contractual terms, the exact value of that. But I am delighted to say that it was profitable, but it's not going to move the dial, if that's what you're looking for.
Sure.
It's a
Understood.
nice thing to have, and it's great credentials for us going forward. On the smart meter rollout, again, I'm a little sensitive to client in terms of talking about profit margins. You see, in general terms, we're a 10% margin business. That side, when you get into the technical side and so on, it is north of that average. That's as much guidance as I could give on that. What is great about it is that there will be more such opportunities, because MEDC will not be the only electricity distribution company rolling out smart meters. And the solution we've got, which is 100% Omani workforce carrying out the work with a brilliant international technical partner who's going to bring knowledge transfer and capability transfer and upskilling of that Omani workforce to be able to install the smart meters. And similarly, as those smart meters make those Omani colleagues redundant in their current role, there's an upskilling piece to it to make them capable for doing other smart meter rollout contracts if we were successful, and B, to join our hard FM workforce otherwise. So it's got a lot of very positive things about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Since we're talking about good things, let me ask your views on a couple of other things that you guys announced. There was the 1-year extension of the Ministry of Health contract, and you mentioned in the past that you handle almost 100% of all the requirements. Now, is this because it's a pandemic year that they've only extended by a year? I mean, so basically my question is, coming into 2022, if they are happy with the scope of services that are provided by you, do you see this contract being tendered for a longer period? I'm just asking this question as shareholder and just to get visibility on this business, given how important it is to Renaissance. Could you talk about that? So that's my first question. And the second question I had is, the waste management project that you guys are going to go live in 2022. Could you give us some guidance in terms of what sort of top line and bottom line impact are you expecting in 2022, and what sort of aspirations you have for the business going forward?
Sure. So let me start on Ministry of Health. So Ministry of Health, we are the sort of 100% services provider across their main hospitals, etc., the length and breadth of the country. So we were defending that as an incumbent, and because cost of doing business has gone up, and the chairman touches on this in his statement, and that we're starting to see those costs of the last few years' cost rises being translated into new contract terms and conditions as cyclical contracts come round. So we were a little concerned, would we be able to retain 100%? It's a one-off that happened. Now, what happened during the pandemic was there was a mixed response. A lot of people picked up the tender. A lot of people went and looked at how we're performing. I'm very pleased to say I don't think I would be speaking out of turn because our client is delighted with our services. And so that element is very much there. And but I think there was concern in the tender board at a mixed response, a number of tenderers not submitting. There was one of the tenders had a technical fault in it in relation to the bond. And in all cases, the prices had gone up. And so for that reason, I think there was a view to look at, can we extend for a year while they consider their options? So we have entered into negotiations with them for that extension, which, as you see from the chairman's statement, has been granted. But it does include us putting in some changes in prices that deal with additional cost of doing business while they consider their options. What we can see from what is, of course, posted on the tender board's public pronouncements on these things, we can see that we are in, what we call L1, the lowest bidder position, competitively, again, across the whole system. So we have to be a little patient as to whether MOH decide to then award us what would be a 3-year contract with a 1-year option on top of this extension, or whether they decide to rerun the tender because of the nature of what happened in that tender process. But if they were to award the tender on what was submitted previously, and I believe they have a very good price from us in that, and that if they were to take advantage of that price at this point, then we could expect a further award beyond this 1-year extension and be taking a 3-year full contract period after that. But that decision is not made yet, and we will come back accordingly on that. So,
Yep, thank you for that. I think my second question was regarding the waste management project that you guys are going to, start in 2022.
Yes. So on the waste management, the grand total across all the waste collection contracts, the values of those projects are about 234 million riyals. And we have about 19 million of that. So we came late to the party. It was a diversification of our services. But since we came late to it, we've won. We won in CZAD, we won in Worcester, and now we've won for the PDO concession area. Now, in terms of top line values of all our BIA contracts, of that 234, that 19 million, about 7 million is in what we were doing already in Worcester and in CZAD. So this will add another 12 million to that, taking us up to that 19 million. Now you have to, part of it happens very quickly. The dump site clearance is about 1.5 million of that, happens in the first 2 years. And then the balance, 10.5 million, is over the remaining, is over a period of 7 years.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And the last question I have, I mean, this obviously some cause for concern. You guys have been speaking about this in the last few company reports, and this time I think you elaborated it a little bit more in terms of the challenges you're facing to ramp up occupancy in Duqm. Now, I believe Renaissance is already committed to adding another 5,000 beds, in addition to your current capacity. Now, so you're looking at some point 22,500 beds coming on stream, and currently you're only looking at occupancy of 12,000 beds. Now, you've of course highlighted all the challenges that you're facing to ramp up this capacity, but it's been happening for a while. It's something you've spoken about in the last 3 reports. So as shareholders, one concern is, will this problem go away, and how soon will it go away? And in the event that the problem doesn't go away, do occupancy levels remain at the 12,000 odd, or despite the challenges you're facing, given the subpar accommodation provided by some of the other clients, and maybe the authorities, doing their bit but not doing enough to sort of clamp down on it, where do you see occupancy levels next year or 3 months from now? Because these challenges are not something that's going to be easy to sort of fight in a month or so. And you guys have already spoken about this for 9 months now. So it gives some cause for concern. So I just wanted to hear your views in addition to what you wrote in the company report.
Well, first of all, we absolutely share your concerns. I think we're singing from the same song sheet in terms of what you as a shareholder and all our shareholders deserve from this project. And it is concerned that we have a major project being implemented in Dukkam. It is at peak occupancy right now. We should be full. If I could clarify on the 22,500 beds, we don't have plans to build more. If you took the footprint of every single room, so let me say a room that could take shared accommodation for 6, or shared accommodation for 4 or 2, or singles. The single rooms are single rooms, full stop. But the shared accommodation, you'll have people taking 4 to a room, some taking 3, some taking 2, and we have pricing for each of those categories, where the yields we get from that room will be very similar. So at the moment, with the demographic of rooms that are already occupied, the capacity is currently standing at 18,600 because of some of those 6s, potential 6s is filled with a 4 and paid for as a 4, or a potential 2 is a single, and so on. So that's how that works. So we can go up to 22,500 if the demographic demand was precisely for the mix of beds. But once we're full, if we were full at 18,600, it's as good as being full at 22,500, and so on. Is the principle of that. In terms of what are we going to do and how soon do we expect to see a change, and what's the prognosis for the remainder or for next year? First of all, we have been at every level knocking at this door, and I think that is the nature of the note of concern you express in the question. That we have been bashing this door for a long time, and we've had on one hand a lot of help, cooperation. An inspection team went and actually moved people. There were people from Ministry of Labour, from CZAD, from the Wali's office, from Dukkam municipality, from ROP, who shut down a lot of these substandard places. But unfortunately, there are contractors, subcontractors, and employers in Oman and in Dukkam who always try and get around this. They somehow think that looking after people in conditions that frankly tick all the boxes of definitions for modern slavery is somehow going to save them money and be good for the country. I mean, the reputational damage that would be wreaked on Oman, on Dukkam, on the whole CZAD project, if international finances who absolutely rely on the fact that proper ILO standard will be provided. And I think that's an important thing to note, that what we provide is not profligate excess standards. They meet the UN definition which is what man wants. And if you were to build a temporary camp to the same standard, it would cost you more than staying with us. Those are the economics of it. That's the competitive nature and our confidence in our project. So, you know, when you look to pre-COVID, we were at 17,500 occupancy. And I think some of the less scrupulous contractors took advantage of that to thin out into these unacceptable substandard locations. So this could be resolved overnight if either the authorities or the major project oversight insisted on their own standards being implemented immediately. We would be full tomorrow. It's not happening as fast as that, but we are assured of different support from various quarters of it. But at least we know there is a constituency of potential occupants already in situ in Dukem that could solve this problem overnight. And they're required for a year to finish the refinery. It takes us into 2023 when there'll be more visibility on other projects happening. The alternative is whilst there will be some demobilization from the civils teams, there's a mobilization coming in of MEI teams, the mechanical electrical instrumentation teams required to finish the refinery. They're not mobilized then because of the punitive airfare cost. And there's a big debate going on around that. As soon as that debate ends and there's a solution to it, then we can expect to see an increase in occupancy, because the EPC contractor, the first 3,000 of those has already pledged those to come and join us in Renaissance Village, Dukem. So I can't give a number of what the occupancy will be next year because of this problem. I can give a number of what the occupancy can be, which is full. The population is there and available to fill us overnight. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much for that. And the last question for me is, you know, when you guys were doing the capital reduction, there was talk of Renaissance committing to paying the large, substantial portion of its cash flows after meeting its, you know, various debt commitments to shareholders as dividends. And of course, pandemic hit, you know, profitability was affected. I mean, you guys are still managing to do well. This quarter was fantastic. But, you know, just in terms of that commitment that, you know, cash flows will go back as dividends to shareholders, is that something that we can still hold you guys to?
So it is our policy. I mean, during the latter years of our holding in Topaz, I think we explained why we couldn't pay out dividends at that time. There was for good reason. We had to put the business first. We had obviously the benefit of the divestment funds coming to us, and we pledged at that time we would go back to our original dividends policy, which is that we want to be paying a regular and consistent dividend to our shareholders. Of course, we will prioritize when there is opportunity to invest in the business, that we would prioritize cash going to growth if that is going to be value accretive to our shareholders. But notwithstanding that, we want you to be able to see a regular and consistent dividend similar to what you've seen over the last 2 years. That is our desire and our goal, to do similar every year, and in the event of any windfall year, to do better than that. But Vishal, can I ask you to add to that?
So Steve, you have covered very well, and Abbas, you can see our liquidity position. So we are set for projects as well as set for our consistency of dividend payment. And Steve has covered it all.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you very much. That's all from my side. I mean, I really appreciate you answering comments with that much transparency, and the company's in safe hands with you too, and of course the board. Thank you.
Thanks very much for some great questions. And I would add when you're looking at the liquidity on the balance sheet, we've had, our team has really been doing very well on collections, given the current circumstances in the market. And of course, things are getting better with economic activity starting to regalvanize. But we do have one or two major debtors in our government contracts. We've got some government contracts that are very prompt payers as well. So this is not a complaint against the government or anything like that, but we are having to do a lot of running to get some long-standing. There's no dispute in the debt. There's not a case of it won't be, it's not won't pay, it's can't pay or whatever at the moment for whatever reasons that they give. And that, if we could get that just back to normalize, then we would be in an even better position in terms of liquidity. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Samir, you can go ahead with your questions. Joyce, you can ask your question, Joyce.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the call, and congratulations on the good set of numbers. I have a very quick follow-up question on the margins. One of the major risks that we all are looking at is the inflation risk. So by the nature of our business, you are very much exposed to the inflationary pressures because you're buying your most of the goods on a regular basis. But at the same time, we are seeing the business model or the revenue model is on a fixed price basis, be it your room rental or the price that you charge for the MOH contract. So my question is, how do you be able to fight these pressures over the next couple of years if we are seeing the inflation persisting for the next couple of years? And what's the extent of pressure that we are seeing in the EBITDA margins?
So I think the two of us will answer this question in as a tag team. And I'll go first, which is, yes, we cannot ignore the fact that there is inflationary pressure. It's global news. It's in the global supply chain. It's in shortages. Some of it is temporary. I think that is one important thing to note. But like a lot of these things, when something goes up, it takes a lot longer to go down again. We counter this in a few ways. One, you've already covered. In our cyclical contracts, we are able to change our pricing accordingly. In principle, in Dukem, we are in control of what we charge. And whilst we always fight to keep the price the same, and we haven't changed the price, even the money we threw at keeping people safe in the pandemic, we didn't pass on to customers. We felt it was right for projects. Now, whilst we've stood by those projects and kept their prices the same, not all the project people have come to stay with us, as we've just discussed at some length. But so there's pricing is one issue. There's also efficiency. And I know, in the chairman's statement, there's a couple of sort of taglines that we put into our Renaissance 2.0, where we talk about operational optimization or excellence being about profit today, and innovation optimization and excellence being about profit tomorrow. And across the company, there are a tremendous number of effort going into all of these things. Our whole green agenda is not only the right thing to do, it's the most efficient thing to do as well in most cases. Some things are cost neutral, some may be a little costly, but overall, these things drive down cost. Our whole safety ethos is about the right way of doing things. So we've brought a lot of efficiency into the business at the same time we've seen this inflationary pressure come in. And so the unfortunate thing is that efficiency is being used to counterweight inflation rather than to drive additional value into performance. But so far we are feeling that we're managing this inflationary pressure as well as can be expected. It has come into our performance in the last quarter or so, but we're taking other steps that are counterweighting it as best we can. Vishal.
Joyce, this is a very good question and the relevant question. So inflation is there for all the businesses, not for us as well. So the point is how we can manage it. And this our innovation, cost optimization, operational optimization, all these we rolled out over last 3-year period. So when inflation came in, we were ready, we were prepared to really do and handle it well. And that's the reason whatever tenders we have participated, whether it is MEDC we discussed earlier, whether it is MOH, considering all the innovation, automation, our buying power, we have changed how we buy stuff, we were still able to offer to our customers a very good pricing considering what's happening in the market. And that's the reason you are seeing that our winning rate has been good. So what we have done, we have used this inflation in our advantage, because many of the contractors, many of the suppliers and service providers who were not ready or prepared well, we can see that their prices have just gone up and become very uncompetitive. But because we were ready or prepared slightly better, we were able to offer to our customers a good price. So if the inflation was not there, whether our margin could have been better in this year, the answer is yes, but not to a great extent, because all the optimization we have done has really kept it there. But inflation is there, and as Steve mentioned, that in this cyclical tendering opportunity, we always see that how we take care of customers and how we take care of ourselves as well. In terms of Dukkam, we have more flexibility. So because it is not a prescribed contract, so you can have a very open dialogue with your customer. Say that cost has gone up, so how we can change into the menu engineering, offering the same nutritious food, same quality, but then there is a dialogue and we provide various flexible options. So all these things really worked out well for us, and we were able to absorb some of these inflationary pressure, and that you can see in our margins that we are still able to hold our margin. Next year, of course, as months pass, there is inflationary pressure coming in, but then most of it or half of it, we are seeing the temporary, what Steve mentioned. So that will ease out. And some of those permanent stuff we will be able to handle through our rollout programs and in dialogue with our customers. And some of customers were very fair. They understood when you speak to them, they are ready to understand and they are ready to absorb or share some of those costs. So we were okay this year. We are putting our business plan together. This is the time of the business plan, and we are seeing that some of those costs, how we are going to handle it. And it is good to know that we are in a position to handle most of those inflationary pressure based on our program. Thanks,
yeah, if I can add to that, Joyce, that this year has been a particularly busy year for most of our cyclical tenders to come round. some are 3 years, some are 5 years, some are 2 year, 1 year, and sometimes all the planets line up in the same year, and this has been one of them. So we've had a really good opportunity to recalibrate a lot of these costs. We announced the material ones. That's why we did announce the Ministry of Health. There are some others that are important. They're reasonable size, but they're not necessarily material. Oman LNG has come back to us with another 4-year contract. We've higher water. There's a number of things. Salalah Port Services, a range of valued clients where we've had to go out to competition. They have quite rightly, particularly the government-owned enterprises, etc., have a requirement to go and test the market. We fully respect that. And we've also seen a lot of client satisfaction coming through where if we have not been the lowest bidder, there has been a real technical evaluation and justification, which of course these things are auditable and need to stand up to scrutiny. And we've had a very successful run. Literally 100% of what we've had to defend this year, we've kept. There are two exceptions, not that we've lost them. The MOH one we described is pending. We got an extension while they review their options. And there's a military one that I can't talk about in detail that, again, we got into lowest bid, but because they don't want to contemplate rising prices, they're thinking of running the process again. But it's going to be a case of asking the same question and getting the same answer. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And the small question that I have is the 12,000 occupants, rooms occupied, beds occupied. Is it as of September or as of now?
So it's 12,000 at the moment. I want to say that in that 12,000, we've just had a very successful period with friends from the UK military working with the Omani forces on the Operation Khanjar exercise. And so there are about 643 left there today, and they'll be going in the next over the next 10 days. So we'll see a tail off, a drop off of those 643, but we do have sort of a trickle coming in of the sort of remobilizing down there. So we're seeing 12,000 as a guiding number until there's some real movement on the issues we talked about earlier on.
Okay, thank you. That is just to confirm if there was any movements during the last 45 days. That's it from my side. Thank you very much, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Samir, go ahead with your questions, please.
Thank you, Vishal, and just to you. I have a couple of follow-up questions. First, on your mention about Abu Dhabi and Saudi projects, which you are looking for. Can we know how big is the size? How will it, make a major change to the needle, or it's like a smaller one, like you took in the waste management, like a smaller and gradually ramping up. So how big are these projects?
Okay, the Saudi one is an expression of interest that does not have detail around it, and there's a degree of commercial occupancy there. So we would need to, unlike Duqm, where we can take commercial risk judgments on our home turf, we'd need to see what sort of guaranteed levels of occupancy for us to do that in a neighborly country. In the Abu Dhabi example is actually more, it's active, it's the actual pre-qual is on in full spate. It involves about 10,000 people. So if you take our current full pack footprint is 7,500, or Dukem is 12,000. This is 10,000. Again, there's an option for them to split it into 2 awards of 5,000. So, but it's sizable, and it's offshore, and it's 100% guaranteed. So it's got some really nice features that speak to our real USP capabilities in this space. Of course, we're an Omani company, coming into UAE, but we've been invited. We were approached by them for this. It's an ADNOC project. Doesn't mean we'll win. I think it's always tougher to win. We have our subsidiary in the UAE, but it's not to that scale. It's not doing this at this point in time, but we have that there. We would definitely be looking at co-investors. They want, and this is what they would want. They'd want some of we've got co-investors with us here in Dukem who are willing to come with us. And we've got likely co-investors talking, they'd like to join us if we're successful over there. So we wouldn't do 100% of the investment ourselves. It would be similar to the Dukem model, and we would operate at 100% ourselves. It's early days, and it'd be wrong of us to in any way give the impression that we are in a great position and we're in the fortunate position that we've been approached to pre-qualify. It's very interesting. It's in our space. Whether we as an Omani entity can convert that into a win or into being getting into the bid and having a real crack at it remains to be seen. But these opportunities are arising in the region, and it's very nice to see that potential clients are seeking us out and asking us to come and compete. That's it, Samir. Don't read more into it than that. It's just a great opportunity, and we're pursuing it.
Totally understood, and it's great to know that, Steve. So in case so can we expect a margin similar to PDO, or would it be like a Dukem kind of a margin for the Abu Dhabi venture?
I think this is very much in the PDO range. It's got a guaranteed occupancy, so it's going to be very bankable. It's really interesting. It's offshore islands where they need to actually go up, similar to our Dukem project, to get the numbers on smaller pieces of land. I would compare it at the moment. It's just in pre-qual. We need to get RFP and see the entire scope. But it's that sort of a high-end standard, really looking for what we do on the senior side, single room side of Dukem, that kind of standard that they want there, and that's what's attracted them to us, and we're in the frame.
Oh, that's really helpful. And one more clarity I needed is on the bed number you mentioned on the Dukem. So you said the current capacity stands at 18,600 and not 22,500. Is that correct?
Yes. So it is. It's difficult to get this across, Samir. If let's say we had one room in Dukem, and it has the flexibility to be used as a 6-people shared room, or a 5, or a 4, or a 3, or a 2, or converted with a single, and that we've got a store with all the right furniture to move out and change the capacity of that room. And we said, you said, what's your total capacity? We said it's 6. And then a single person books that room for the next 3 years for their project. Our capacity would now be 1. And so that's what's happened, but on multiple rooms. So if every single bed capacity was occupied, they happen to want the footprint that we've got of singles and doubles and 6s and so on, we'd be at 22,500. Once some of those rooms have gone for lesser occupancy than their full capacity, the remaining capacity comes down, and that's why those same 22,500 space is currently, the capacity is 18,600 across exactly the same space because of those, the actual demographic of rooms taken. I don't know if that gets it across.
Yeah, totally understood. But I just want to.
And Sameer, just I want to add on, when the number of beds changes, then also the charge rate changes. So for example, when there is a 4 in a room or 2 in a room, the charge rate will be different. So overall, in terms of the revenue and bottom line, it doesn't deviate too much. It doesn't differ too much. So let's say if 8 in a room is more, and on the other side, 6 in a room is more, in one particular month, revenue will be same, because 6 in a room, the charge rate will be higher. In a 8 in a room, the charge rate will be lower. Some minor adjustments happen. But overall, the way this PAC program or Dukkam program is done, overall top line and particularly bottom line almost stays within the range, Sameer, irrespective of whether it is 18,000 or 22,000. Yeah.
Oh, it's clear. Thank you so much, Vishal, and wish you guys all the best for your Manazil and other Abu Dhabi and Saudi venture. Thank you.
Thank you, Sameer. If anyone has any question, please raise your hands. Otherwise, we are almost at the end of our Q&A session. So we don't have any further questions, Steve, and we can wrap it up.
First, as always, thank you to all of you. I think the questions were spot on as always. You keep us on our toes, and I'm sure that's why there are no questions to follow up, because other people may have had the same questions lined up. And it's been a positive quarter for us. The challenge does still lie in this Dukkam occupancy issue, and we're working day and night to resolve that. And we've got huge support from our board getting involved. We've got co-investors getting involved, like Royal Court Affairs and Ministry of Defence Pension Fund. So we do hope to bring you better news on that as we go forward, and it will not be for the lack of trying. Again, thank you all for your interest in giving us your time. Today we look forward at the end of the next quarter, where it'll be the year-end results, and we can share this time again. Thank you very much indeed.